The rain fell in sheets that November afternoon, drumming against the metal roof of the bus shelter like thousands of tiny fingers demanding attention. The kind of rain that made people question their decisions, that turned ordinary streets into rivers and transformed the city of Portland into a grey watercolor painting where everything bled into everything else. Marcus Thompson sat alone on the cold metal bench inside the shelter, his prosthetic leg extended slightly to ease the phantom pain that came with weather changes. At 34 years old, he had the body of a man who had seen war and the eyes of someone who had lost pieces of himself in distant deserts. His left sleeve hung empty below the elbow, a permanent reminder of the IED explosion that had ended his career as a Navy SEAL 18 months ago. He watched the rain cascade down the transparent panels of the shelter, each droplet tracing its own path before merging with others and disappearing into the concrete below. There was something hypnotic about it, something that allowed his mind to drift to places he usually fought hard to avoid. The sounds of the rain became something else in his memory, the patter transforming into the rhythmic thump of helicopter rotors, the splash of water becoming the distant percussion of gunfire. Marcus closed his eyes and forced himself to breathe. In through the nose, 4 counts, hold for 7, out through the mouth for 8. The technique his therapist had taught him, the one that sometimes worked and sometimes felt like trying to put out a forest fire with a garden hose. The bus was late. Of course it was. Everything in his life seemed to run on its own schedule now, indifferent to his plans or expectations. He had a job interview in 45 minutes. His first real attempt at rejoining the civilian world. A security consultant position at a private firm downtown, the kind of job they gave to broken soldiers who still needed to feel useful. The rain intensified, and Marcus pulled his worn military jacket tighter around his shoulders. He had considered driving, but his truck had broken down 3 days ago, and the repair costs were more than he had in his account. Pride had kept him from asking for help, the same pride that had him sitting alone in a bus shelter instead of calling one of his former teammates who would have dropped everything to give him a ride. That was when he noticed the boy. He appeared at the edge of the shelter like a ghost materializing from the storm, small and soaked through, his thin jacket doing nothing to protect him from the cold. He could not have been more than 8 or 9 years old, with brown skin a few shades lighter than Marcus's own, and eyes that seemed far too old for his young face. The boy hesitated at the entrance of the shelter, water dripping from his clothes and forming a small puddle at his feet. He clutched a worn backpack to his chest like a shield, and his sneakers, Marcus noticed, had holes in them where the rubber had separated from the canvas. Before you continue with this story, if you are enjoying what you are hearing, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Your support helps us create more content like this, and it means the world to us. Now let us get back to this incredible journey. Marcus shifted on the bench, making room without saying anything, an invitation without pressure. He remembered being a kid himself, remembered being wary of strangers and the complicated calculus of deciding who was safe and who was not. The boy studied him for a long moment, his eyes moving from Marcus's face to his empty sleeve to his prosthetic leg, visible beneath his rain-spotted pants. Most people looked away quickly, embarrassed or uncomfortable. This kid just observed, cataloging information the way Marcus himself had been trained to assess situations. Finally, the boy stepped inside the shelter and sat down on the opposite end of the bench, as far from Marcus as he could get while still being out of the rain. He set his backpack beside him and wrapped his thin arms around himself, shivering. They sat in silence for several minutes, the rain providing enough noise to fill the space between them. Marcus kept his gaze forward, giving the kid his privacy while remaining aware of him in his peripheral vision. The boy's shivering grew more pronounced, and Marcus could hear his teeth chattering. Without thinking too much about it, Marcus unzipped his military jacket and shrugged it off, extending it toward the boy with his remaining hand. The kid looked at the offering, then up at Marcus, suspicion and longing warring on his face. "You look cold," Marcus said simply. "Take it." The boy hesitated for another few seconds before reaching out and accepting the jacket. He wrapped it around himself like a blanket, disappearing into the fabric that was 3 sizes too big for him. The shivering gradually subsided. "Thanks," the boy said quietly. His voice was soft but not weak, the voice of someone who had learned to take up as little space as possible. Marcus nodded and turned his attention back to the rain. The cold bit at his exposed arms through his thin, long-sleeved shirt. But he had experienced worse. Far worse. The discomfort was almost welcome, a distraction from the anxious thoughts circling in his mind about the interview, about his future, about everything he had lost. Several more minutes passed before the boy spoke again. "Are you sad too?" The question hit Marcus like a physical blow, unexpected and precise. He turned to look at the kid, really look at him for the first time. Up close, he could see the dark circles under those old young eyes, the hollows in his cheeks that spoke of meals missed or stretched too thin. There was a small scar above his left eyebrow, pink and relatively new. "What makes you think I'm sad?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious. The boy shrugged, pulling the jacket tighter. "You have that look, like you are somewhere else, even when you are right here. My mom used to get that look before she went away." The words were delivered matter-of-factly, without self-pity, which somehow made them harder to hear. Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a crack forming in the wall he had built around himself over the past 18 months. "Maybe I am," he admitted, "some days more than others." The boy nodded, as if this confirmed something he already knew. "Today is a more day for me too." Marcus studied the kid's profile, the determined set of his jaw, the way his eyes kept scanning the street as if watching for something or someone. Every instinct he had developed over 15 years of military service told him this child was in trouble. "What is your name?" Marcus asked. "Elijah," the boy answered, "but my foster mom calls me Eli." Foster mom. The words explained a lot. Marcus had known foster kids during his own childhood in Baltimore, had seen them cycle through the system, some finding safe harbor and others falling through the cracks like water through cupped hands. "I'm Marcus." Elijah looked at him sideways. "Were you in the army?" "Navy, actually. I was a SEAL." The boy's eyes widened slightly, the first genuine spark of interest Marcus had seen. Like the Special Forces guys who got Bin Laden? Marcus allowed himself a small smile. Different team, but same community. "Yeah." Elijah was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then, with the bluntness that only children possess, he asked, "Is that how you lost your arm and your leg?" The questions that adults danced around, that they whispered about behind his back or pretended not to notice, delivered straight and unadorned. Marcus appreciated the honesty. "Yeah," he said, "there was an explosion. I was lucky to survive." Elijah considered this. "Does it hurt?" "Sometimes. The leg less than the arm. There is this thing called phantom pain, where you can feel things in parts of your body that are not there anymore. The brain gets confused." The boy absorbed this information with a serious expression. "My brain gets confused sometimes too," he said. "Not about body parts, about other stuff." "What kind of stuff?" Elijah did not answer right away. He stared out at the rain, which was beginning to lighten from a downpour to a steady drizzle. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "About where I am supposed to be, about if anyone is going to keep me this time." Marcus felt his heart constrict. The pain in those words was familiar, different in its specifics but identical in its essence. The fear of not belonging, of being discarded, of being not enough. "How long have you been in foster care?" Marcus asked gently. "Since I was 5. My mum, she had problems with drugs. She tried to get better, but it was really hard for her. One day she just did not come home from work. Elijah said the last part, as if reciting facts from a textbook, a defense mechanism Marcus recognized. If you said the words enough times, if you stripped them of emotion, they could not hurt you as much. It was a lie, of course. The words still cut. You just got better at hiding the bleeding. "I'm sorry," Marcus said, and he meant it. "It is okay. I mean, it is not okay, but it is what it is. That is what my counselor says. We cannot change what happened, only how we deal with it." "Smart counselor." Elijah shrugged. "She is all right, better than the one I had before who kept asking me to draw my feelings. I do not like to draw." The ghost of a smile crossed Marcus's face. "What do you like to do?" For the first time since he sat down, Elijah's expression brightened. "I like to read, especially adventure books, and I am really good at math. My teacher says I am at a 5th grade level, and I am only in 3rd grade. Pride crept into the boy's voice, a reminder that beneath the weight he carried, there was still a child who found joy in his accomplishments. Marcus felt a surge of something he could not quite name. "That is impressive," he said honestly. "I was never very good at math, had to work twice as hard as everyone else. But you became a SEAL. That is like the hardest thing to become." "It is one of the hardest things to become," Marcus agreed. "But it was never about being the best at any one thing. It was about not giving up when everything in you wanted to quit." Elijah absorbed this, filing it away the way he seemed to file everything. "Did you ever want to quit?" Marcus thought about Bud S. training, about Hell Week, about the countless moments when his body had screamed at him to ring the bell and walk away. He thought about the hospital room where he had woken up missing pieces of himself, about the months of rehabilitation, about the dark nights when the only thing that kept him breathing was pure, stubborn refusal. "Every day," he admitted, "sometimes every hour. But I kept showing up. That is the secret that nobody tells you. Success is not about never falling down. It is about getting back up one more time than you fall." Elijah was quiet, considering this. Then he asked, "Do you still get back up, even now?" The question struck deeper than the boy could have known. Marcus thought about the empty apartment he went home to each night, about the bottles of sleeping pills and pain medication lined up on his bathroom counter, about the mornings when getting out of bed felt like climbing Everest. "I'm trying to," he said. "Some days it is harder than others." "But you are here," Elijah pointed out, "at the bus stop, going somewhere." Marcus nodded slowly. "I have a job interview, my first one since I got hurt." Elijah's face grew serious with the weight of understanding beyond his years. "That is you getting back up." The simple observation hit Marcus harder than he expected. He had been so focused on everything he had lost, on everything that was wrong, that he had not given himself credit for the small victories, for getting out of bed, for showering and putting on clean clothes, for sitting at this bus stop, despite every nerve in his body telling him to go back home and hide. "Yeah," he said slowly, "I guess it is." "You should get the job," Elijah said with sudden conviction. "You would be good at it." "You do not even know what the job is." "Does not matter. You were a Navy SEAL. You can do anything." The absolute certainty in the boy's voice was startling. When had Marcus stopped believing that about himself? When had he gone from being the man who ran toward danger, while others ran away, to the man who could barely face a job interview? "Can I ask you something?" Marcus said. Elijah nodded. "Why are you out here alone in the rain? Does your foster mum know where you are?" The brightness faded from Elijah's face, replaced by that guarded expression from before. "She knows. She is the one who told me to leave." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "What do you mean she told you to leave?" Elijah picked at a loose thread on his backpack, not meeting Marcus's eyes. "She said she could not do it anymore, that I was too much work, that she was going to call my caseworker on Monday and have me moved somewhere else." The words were delivered with that same flat effect, that practiced detachment, but Marcus could see the tremor in the boy's hands, could see the effort it took to hold himself together. "She just put you out in this weather?" "She said I could stay in the garage until my caseworker comes, but I did not want to. The garage smells bad, and there are spiders." Marcus took a deep breath, trying to contain the anger that was building in his chest. He had seen a lot of terrible things in his life, had witnessed the depths of human cruelty in war zones around the world, but something about this, about a child being discarded like unwanted furniture, hit him differently. "Where were you planning to go?" he asked, keeping his voice carefully neutral. Elijah shrugged. "I do not know. Sometimes I just walk until I figure something out. I ended up here. In the rain, in November, with holes in your shoes and a jacket that could not stop a light breeze." The boy did not respond, but his shoulders hunched slightly, a defensive curl that made him look even smaller than he was. Marcus checked his watch. His interview was in 30 minutes, and the bus was still nowhere in sight. He had two choices: wait for the bus and make the interview, or deal with what was right in front of him. It was not really a choice at all. "Elijah," he said, and waited until the boy looked at him. "I need you to tell me your foster mum's name and address, and your caseworker's name if you know it." "Why?" Fear crept into Elijah's eyes. "Are you going to call the police?" "No, well, maybe. I'm going to make sure you are safe and that someone who is supposed to be taking care of you is actually doing their job." Elijah's expression wavered between hope and suspicion. People say stuff like that sometimes, then they do not do anything, or they make it worse. The words were delivered without accusation, just simple truth, born from experience. How many times had this kid been let down by adults who were supposed to protect him? "I know," Marcus said, "and I cannot promise that I will not mess this up somehow, but I can promise that I will try, and I do not give up easy." Elijah studied his face for a long moment, searching for something. Whatever he was looking for, he seemed to find it. "Her name is Sandra Mitchell," he said quietly. "She lives on Hawthorne Street. I do not remember the number, but it is the yellow house with the broken fence. My caseworker is Mrs. Patterson. She works for DHS." Marcus pulled out his phone and typed the information into his notes app. "Okay, here is what is going to happen. I'm going to make some calls. You are going to stay with me until we figure out somewhere safe for you to go." Elijah's eyes widened. "You would do that, but your interview?" "The interview can wait." Marcus was surprised by how certain he felt. For the first time in months, something other than his own problems filled his vision. "You cannot." The boy was quiet for a moment, then in a small voice, "Why are you helping me? You do not even know me." It was a fair question, and Marcus considered his answer carefully, because a long time ago, when I was not much older than you, somebody helped me when they did not have to. Gave me a chance when everyone else had written me off. I would not be here if it was not for them. "What happened?" "I was a foster kid too," Marcus said. The words came easier than he expected. "From the time I was 7 until I turned 18. I was in 11 different homes. Some were okay, some were not. But there was this one guy, Mr. Williams. He was a veteran like me, Vietnam. He took me in when I was 15, and nobody else wanted me because I was too angry, too difficult, too broken." Elijah leaned forward slightly, drawn into the story. "What did he do?" "He did not fix me," Marcus said. "He did not try to pretend everything was okay, or that my life had not been hard. He just showed up, every day, even when I pushed him away, even when I screamed at him and told him I hated him. He just kept showing up." The memory of Thomas Williams rose in Marcus's mind, unbidden. The old man sitting on the porch cleaning his rifle, patient as a stone. The way he never raised his voice, never raised his hand. The long walks they took through the neighborhood, mostly in silence. Thomas understanding that sometimes being present was enough. He taught me about the Navy, Marcus continued, told me stories about his service, about the men he served with. For the first time in my life, I saw a future that did not end in prison or a grave. He made me believe I could be something different than what I came from. Did he adopt you? Marcus shook his head. He died when I was 17. Heart attack. I stayed in the system for another year until I aged out. But by then, he had already changed everything. 6 months after I turned 18, I enlisted, became everything he believed I could be. Elijah absorbed this in silence. Then, I am sorry he died. Me too. I think about him a lot, especially lately. Wonder what he would say if he could see me now. What do you think he would say? Marcus looked out at the rain, which had slowed to barely a drizzle. The clouds were beginning to break apart, hints of pale winter sun forcing through the grey. He would probably tell me to stop feeling sorry for myself, that I have been through worse and came out the other side, that there is still work to do. You are doing work right now, Elijah pointed out. You are helping me. The simple observation struck Marcus like a revelation. For 18 months, he had been so focused on what he could no longer do that he had forgotten all the things he still could. He could not lead a SEAL team into combat anymore. He could not run 5 miles or climb a rope or do any of the physical things that had defined his identity for so long. But he could sit with a scared kid in a bus shelter. He could make phone calls and advocate for someone who had no one else. He could show up. Yeah, he said slowly, I guess I am. The sun broke fully through the clouds, transforming the wet streets into ribbons of reflected light. The world seemed to shift in that moment, something intangible but real changing between them. Marcus pulled out his phone again and dialed a number from memory. It rang twice before a familiar voice answered. Marcus, oh my God, Marcus, is that you? Hey, Shonda, it has been a while. Shonda Williams, Thomas's daughter. She had been away at college during the years Marcus lived with her father, but she had come back for the funeral and kept in touch over the years. She had become a social worker herself, inspired by the example her father had set. It has been almost 2 years. I have been worried about you. Are you okay? I'm working on it. Listen, I need your help with something. Marcus glanced at Elijah, who was watching him with cautious hope. I have a kid here. His name is Elijah. His foster mom just put him out. Put him out? Shonda's voice sharpened. Where is he now? With me at a bus stop. I found him about half an hour ago. There was a brief pause, then Shonda's professional mode kicked in. Okay, what is the foster mom's name? What county is his case in? Marcus relayed the information Elijah had given him. As he talked, he watched the boy's face, saw the way hope and fear battled for dominance in his expression. I'm on it, Shonda said. Give me 20 minutes. I will call you back. The line went dead, and Marcus pocketed his phone. Okay, he told Elijah. My friend is looking into things. She is going to help. Is she nice? Elijah asked. She is one of the best people I know. Her dad was the man I told you about, the one who helped me. Elijah nodded slowly, processing the connection. Do you think she can find me a new place? A better one? I think she is going to try. But Elijah, I want you to know something. Marcus waited until the boy was looking directly at him. Whatever happens next, you are not alone. I know we just met, but I meant what I said. I'm not going to give up on you. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with promise. Elijah's eyes glistened, and he blinked rapidly, fighting back tears. People always say that, he whispered. I know they do, and I know I cannot undo all the times people let you down, but I'm asking you to give me a chance to prove I am different. Can you do that? Elijah did not answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his backpack and pulled out a worn paperback book. The cover showed a boy standing on a raft, looking out at a vast ocean. "This is my favorite book," he said. "My mum gave it to me before she went away. It is about this kid who gets lost at sea with a tiger, and he has to survive all by himself." "Life of Pi," Marcus said, recognizing the cover. "You know it." "I read it a long time ago. It is a good book." "The boy who gets lost," Elijah said, his voice trembling slightly. "He makes it through because he does not give up. Even when everything is scary and he does not know what is going to happen, he just keeps going." "That is right." Elijah held the book out toward Marcus. "Can you hold this for me, just until things get figured out? It is my most important thing, and I do not want to lose it." Marcus understood what was being offered. This was not just a book. It was a test, a sacred trust. Elijah was giving him the most precious thing he owned, betting everything on a stranger he had just met. He took the book carefully, feeling the worn edges, the soft paper, the weight of its meaning. "I will keep it safe," he promised, "and I will give it back to you as soon as you have a safe place to keep it." Elijah nodded, and this time he did not blink away the tears. They rolled silently down his cheeks, tracing clean lines through the dried rain on his skin. "I am scared," he admitted. "I do not want to go to another bad house." "I know, and I cannot promise the next place will be perfect, but I can promise that I will check on you, make sure you are okay. If something is wrong, you tell me, and I will do something about it." "How can you do that? You do not know my caseworker. You are not part of the system." "No, but Shonda is, and she knows people. And honestly, Elijah, I have spent 15 years kicking down doors and solving problems that everyone said were unsolvable. A bureaucracy is just another kind of enemy. One I am happy to fight." The fierceness in his own voice surprised Marcus. Somewhere in the past 30 minutes, something had awakened in him, some purpose he thought he had lost in that hospital bed 18 months ago. He was still a warrior. The battlefield had just changed. His phone rang. "Shonda." "Talk to me," Marcus said. "Okay, so I pulled some strings and talked to some people. Sandra Mitchell has had 3 complaints filed against her in the past 2 years, but nothing ever stuck. I am going to make sure something sticks this time. In the meantime, there is a licensed emergency placement home about 15 minutes from where you are. The Marshalls, good people. I have worked with them before." "They can take Elijah tonight." "What happens after that?" "I'm going to personally oversee his case, make sure he ends up somewhere good, long term, not just a holding pattern." Marcus glanced at Elijah, who was watching him with desperate intensity. "Can I come see him? Check on him?" There was a pause. That is not usually how things work. "Shonda, I'm not asking how things usually work. I am asking if you can make it work." Another pause, longer this time. Then, "Let me talk to the Marshalls and to Elijah's caseworker. If everyone agrees, we can set something up. But Marcus, you know you are not equipped to take on a kid right now, not with everything you are dealing with." The words stung, but only because they were true. He was barely holding his own life together. He had no business inserting himself into a child's already complicated situation. But looking at Elijah, seeing himself reflected in those eyes, he knew he could not walk away. Sometimes you have to fight the battles that choose you, not the ones you choose. "I'm not trying to adopt him," he said. "I just need to know he is okay, that someone is looking out for him. Can you understand that?" "Yeah," Shonda's voice softened. "I understand better than you know. I will make it happen." She gave Marcus the address for the Marshalls' home and said she would meet them there in an hour. After hanging up, Marcus turned to Elijah. "There is a place you can stay tonight. People who will take care of you while everything else gets sorted out. My friend Shonda is going to handle your case personally." Elijah's expression was guarded. "What does that mean, sorted out?" "It means finding you a permanent home, with people who actually want you there and will treat you right." The boy absorbed this, his small hands twisting in his lap. "Will I see you again?" The question Marcus had been dreading. How could he make a promise he might not be able to keep? His own life was so uncertain, so fragile. What if he relapsed into depression? What if he failed? What if he became just another adult who let this kid down? But then he thought about Thomas Williams, sitting on that porch all those years ago. Thomas had made no guarantees either. He had just shown up, day after day, and let consistency speak louder than promises. "Yes," Marcus said firmly, "you will see me again." "When?" "Soon, as soon as Shonda can arrange it." And in the meantime, Marcus pulled out his phone and handed it to Elijah. "Put your caseworker's number in here, and the marshal's number once you have it. If anything happens, if you need anything at all, you find a way to call me." Elijah typed in the numbers with careful precision, then handed the phone back. "What if you do not answer?" "Then leave a message, and I will call you back. That is how it works when you have people who care about you. They might not always pick up on the first ring, but they always call back." The boy considered this, then nodded slowly. "Okay. Okay." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what had just happened settling around them. Then Elijah spoke again. "Marcus." "Yeah? Thank you for stopping, for talking to me, for not being like everyone else." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of years, of disappointments accumulated, and trust slowly rebuilt. Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Thank you for asking me if I was sad," he replied. "I needed someone to ask me that." "Did it help, talking about it?" Marcus thought about it honestly. "Yeah," he said, "it did, more than I realized. My counselor says that talking about hard stuff is like letting air out of a balloon that is too full. If you do not let some out, eventually it pops." "Your counselor sounds pretty smart." Elijah shrugged. "She is okay. She talks too much sometimes, but she means well." The bus appeared at the end of the street, lumbering toward them, through puddles that sprayed up in its wake. Marcus stood, feeling his prosthetic leg protest the cold that had seeped into its mechanisms. "That is our ride," he said. "Well, not to my interview anymore, to your new place." Elijah looked up at him, still wrapped in the military jacket that dwarfed his small frame. "You missed your interview because of me." It was not about the interview. Marcus offered his hand to help the boy up. It was about getting back up, and maybe I needed to do that for someone else before I could do it for myself. Elijah took his hand and stood. The jacket hung past his knees, the sleeves flopping comically beyond his fingers. He looked up at Marcus, and for the first time, a genuine smile crossed his face. "You look like a war hero," Elijah said. "I look like a guy who got blown up and is still figuring things out," Marcus replied, "but I appreciate the upgrade." They walked together to the bus, Marcus's uneven gait matching Elijah's shorter steps. As they climbed aboard and found seats near the back, the last of the clouds cleared away, and pale autumn sunlight flooded through the windows. "Marcus," Elijah said as the bus pulled away from the stop. "Yeah?" "I think Mr. Williams would be proud of you for what you did today." Marcus turned to look at the boy, at this small person who had appeared in his life like a gift he did not know he needed. He thought about Thomas, about legacy, about the ways that kindness echoed through time like ripples in water. "You know what?" he said. "I think he would be too." The bus carried them through the rain-washed streets of Portland toward an uncertain future that somehow felt less frightening than it had an hour ago. Two strangers who had recognized something in each other. Two people lost in their different ways, who had found in each other a reason to keep going. The Marshall home was a modest craftsman-style house on a quiet street lined with maple trees. As the bus dropped them at the corner, Marcus could see the warm glow of lights through the windows, the silhouette of someone moving in the kitchen. Normal, welcoming. A woman appeared on the front porch before they reached the walkway. She was in her mid-50s, with grey-streaked hair pulled back in a practical ponytail and a face that had clearly spent decades practicing kindness. "You must be Elijah," she said, coming down the steps to meet them. "I am Maria Marshall. Welcome to our home." Elijah looked up at Marcus, seeking reassurance. Marcus nodded slightly, and the boy stepped forward. "Thank you for taking me in," Elijah said, the formality of the words at odds with his small voice. Maria's expression softened even further. "We are happy to have you." She looked at Marcus, taking in his missing arm, his prosthetic leg, his bearing. "And you must be the hero Shonda told me about." "I'm not a hero, just someone who was in the right place at the right time." "That is usually what heroes say," Maria smiled. "Would you like to come in? Shonda should be here soon, and I just made hot chocolate." Elijah's face lit up at the mention of hot chocolate, and Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. Such a small thing, hot chocolate. But the way the boy reacted reminded Marcus that despite everything Elijah had been through, he was still a child, still capable of finding joy in the simple things. They went inside, and the warmth of the house wrapped around them like an embrace. The living room was comfortable and lived in, with bookshelves lining the walls and family photos clustered on every surface. A large tabby cat looked up from its spot on the couch, assessed the newcomers, and went back to sleep. "That is Winston," Maria said. "He is 15 years old and completely deaf, but he likes to supervise." She gestured toward a hallway. "Elijah, let me show you your room. Then we will have that hot chocolate." Elijah looked back at Marcus, uncertainty flickering across his face. "I will be right here," Marcus assured him. "Go ahead." The boy followed Maria down the hall, and Marcus was left standing in the living room, suddenly aware of how out of place he felt. He had spent so long in his own isolated world that being in a normal home felt foreign, like visiting another country where he did not speak the language. He moved to the window and looked out at the street. The rain had stopped completely now, and neighbors were emerging from their houses, walking dogs and checking mailboxes. Normal life, continuing as it always did, indifferent to the small dramas playing out behind closed doors. The front door opened, and Shonda Williams stepped inside. She was smaller than Marcus remembered, 5 feet 3 inches of compressed energy in a professional pantsuit, her dark hair cropped close to her head. But her eyes were pure Thomas Williams, warm and seeing everything. "Marcus," she said, and crossed the room to wrap him in a hug that he had not realized he needed. He hugged her back awkwardly, his one arm doing the work of two. "It has been too long." "Whose fault is that?" She pulled back and studied his face. "You look terrible." "Thanks, very encouraging." "I mean, you look like you have not been sleeping or eating or doing any of the things human beings are supposed to do to stay alive. When is the last time you talked to your therapist?" Marcus avoided her eyes. "That is not why you are here." "No, but I am not going to pretend I did not notice." Shonda sighed and moved further into the room. "Okay, first things first. I talked to Elijah's caseworker. She was not happy about me going over her head, but when I explained the situation with Sandra Mitchell, she got a lot more cooperative." "What happens to Sandra?" "Investigation, serious one this time. I have a feeling her fostering days are over." "Good." Marcus felt grim satisfaction at the thought. She should never have been trusted with a child in the first place. "The system is imperfect." Shonda's voice was tired, carrying the weight of years spent trying to fix something fundamentally broken. "We do what we can with what we have. But Marcus, I need to talk to you about your involvement going forward." Marcus braced himself. "Go ahead." "I spoke with the Marshalls. They are willing to have you visit Elijah, but there need to be ground rules. This is a child who has been abandoned multiple times. If you start something, you have to finish it. You cannot be there for him when it is convenient and disappear when it is not." "I understand that." "Do you?" Shonda's eyes searched his face. "Because from what I hear, you have been disappearing on everyone for the past year and a half. Your teammates have been trying to reach you. Your mother has been calling, and you do not answer. You have cut yourself off from everyone who cares about you." The words landed like blows, each one true and each one painful. Marcus wanted to defend himself, to explain that isolation had felt necessary, that being around people reminded him too much of everything he had lost. But the excuses felt hollow, even in his own mind. "I know," he said finally, "I know I've been handling things badly, but today, with Elijah, something changed. I felt like myself again for the first time in months." Shonda's expression softened. "Dad used to say that the best way to fix your own problems is to help someone else with theirs." He was right. Marcus looked toward the hallway where Elijah had disappeared. "That kid reminded me why I became a SEAL in the first place. It was never about the combat. It was about protecting people who could not protect themselves." Before Shonda could respond, Elijah emerged from the hallway, Maria behind him. The boy had changed into dry clothes, clearly borrowed. That fit him better than what he had been wearing. He carried 2 mugs of hot chocolate, one of which he brought directly to Marcus. "I made sure they put extra marshmallows in yours," he said. "Maria said it is the best kind." Marcus took the mug, touched by the gesture. "Thank you." Elijah settled on the couch next to where Marcus stood, and Maria sat in an armchair across from them. Shonda remained standing, clearly in professional mode, despite the personal connections in the room. "Okay," Shonda said, addressing Elijah directly. "I know you have been through a lot today, and you probably have a lot of questions. I want you to know that I am going to be handling your case from now on. That means I am the person you come to if you have any problems or concerns. My job is to make sure you end up somewhere safe and permanent." Elijah nodded, his hands wrapped around his mug. "Is Marcus allowed to visit me?" Shonda glanced at Marcus, then back at the boy. "Yes, we have worked it out so that he can come see you, as long as it does not interfere with your schooling or any other obligations. But Elijah, I need you to understand something. Marcus is not a foster parent or a caseworker. He is a friend. His role is to be there for you, but he cannot make decisions about where you live or go to school. Does that make sense?" Elijah's face fell slightly, and Marcus knew he had been hoping for something more. But the boy nodded. "I understand." "Good." Shonda softened her tone. "Now, do you have any questions for me?" Elijah thought for a moment. "How long will I stay here?" "The marshals have agreed to keep you for at least a month while we look for a more permanent placement. It could be longer if we need more time to find the right fit." "What about school?" Maria spoke up. "There is an elementary school just 2 blocks away. We have already been in touch with them, and they can have you enrolled by Monday." Elijah absorbed this information, his expression thoughtful. Then he looked at Shonda with an intensity that seemed beyond his years. "Can you promise that the next place will be different? That the people will actually want me?" The question hung in the air, heavy with all the broken promises of his short life. Shonda did not flinch from it. "I cannot promise that," she admitted. "No one can. But I can promise that I will do everything in my power to make sure you end up with people who see you, really see you, and want to be your family. And I can promise that if anything goes wrong, I will fix it. You are not alone in this anymore. Do you believe me?" Elijah looked at her for a long moment, then at Marcus, then at Maria. 3 adults, 3 strangers a few hours ago, now all claiming to have his back. "I want to believe you," he said finally. "I'm going to try." "That is all any of us can do," Shonda replied. "Try." The conversation continued for another hour, logistics and plans and phone numbers exchanged. By the time everything was settled, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Marcus stood on the porch with Elijah, Maria, and Shonda, giving them a moment of privacy. "This is really happening," Elijah said. "You are really going to come back." "Every week, if they let me." Marcus crouched down, bringing himself to the boy's eye level. "And remember what I said. If anything happens, anything at all, you find a way to reach me." Elijah nodded, then threw his arms around Marcus in a fierce hug. Marcus closed his eye and hugged back, feeling the boy's thin shoulders, the rapid beat of his heart. "You are going to be okay," Marcus said. "You are one of the strongest people I have ever met, and I have met a lot of strong people." Elijah pulled back, his eyes wet but his jaw set with determination. "So are you," he said. "You are going to be okay too." The words, coming from this child who had every reason to be cynical, felt like a prophecy, or maybe just a promise, one they had made to each other without realizing it. Marcus straightened up and pulled the worn copy of Life of Pi from his jacket pocket. He'd kept it safe all afternoon, a physical reminder of the trust placed in him. "I will hold on to this until you have a permanent home," he said. "Then I will give it back." Elijah nodded. "That is fair." Marcus turned and walked down the steps, his prosthetic leg clicking against the wood. At the bottom, he paused and looked back. Elijah stood in the doorway, backlit by the warm glow of the Marshall home, looking smaller and braver than anyone that size had a right to look. "Same time next week?" Marcus called. "Same time," Elijah agreed. "And Marcus, do not forget about your interview. You still need to get back up too." The words stayed with Marcus as he walked toward the bus stop, as the last light faded from the sky, as the stars began to emerge one by one. He thought about his missed interview, about the job he still needed to find, about all the practical concerns that had seemed so overwhelming just that morning. But something had shifted. The weight he had been carrying, the crushing sense of purposelessness that had defined the past 18 months, felt lighter now. Not gone, but manageable. Shared. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number he had been avoiding for months. "Mom?" "Marcus, baby, is that you?" "Yeah, Mom, it is me. I am sorry I have not called." "Are you okay? I have been so worried." "I am working on it. Actually, I met someone today, a kid. He reminded me of a few things I had forgotten." He told her about Elijah, about the bus stop, about Shonda and the Marshalls. His mother listened without interrupting, and he could hear her crying softly on the other end of the line. "That sounds like something Thomas would have done," she said when he finished. "That is what I thought too. Your father and I want to come see you. We have wanted to come for months, but you kept telling us not to." Marcus closed his eyes. The shame of how he had treated his parents, shutting them out when they only wanted to help, washed over him. "I'm sorry," he said. "I was not ready. I think I'm getting there now." "That is all we need to hear, baby. We will come whenever you say." "Next month for Thanksgiving, if that is okay?" "We will be there. Marcus, I love you. Your father loves you. Nothing that happened to you over there changes that." "I know, Mom, I know." After he hung up, Marcus stood at the bus stop, the same bus stop where everything had changed just hours ago. The bench was empty now, no trace of the boy who had sat there. But Marcus could feel his presence like an imprint on the air. He thought about getting back up, about how he had framed it as something he did for himself, an act of personal resilience. But maybe that was only part of it. Maybe getting back up was also about reaching down to help someone else stand. Maybe the two acts were inseparable, each one making the other possible. The bus came, and Marcus climbed aboard. As it carried him through the dark streets toward his apartment, he held the worn paperback book in his lap, feeling its weight, its history, its promise. A boy lost at sea, surviving against impossible odds because he refused to give up. It was a good story, and maybe, Marcus thought, he was finally ready to write one of his own. The weeks that followed were not easy. Recovery never is. But they were different from the weeks that had come before, marked by purpose instead of aimlessness, by connection instead of isolation. Marcus went back for his interview 2 days later. He apologized for missing the original appointment, explained that a family emergency had come up. The interviewer, a retired Marine named Frank DeLuca, listened to the story without comment. At the end, he offered Marcus the job on the spot. "You handled that situation exactly the way I would want my employees to handle unexpected challenges," Frank said. "Most people would have walked past that kid. You stopped." "I could not just leave him there," Marcus replied. "Exactly. That is the kind of person I want on my team." Marcus started work the following Monday, a security consultant position that utilized his tactical training while accommodating his physical limitations. The hours were regular, the pay was decent, and for the first time in months, he had somewhere to be each morning. He visited Elijah every Saturday without fail. Sometimes they went to the park, sometimes to the library, sometimes they just sat on the marshal's porch and talked. Elijah told him about school, about the friends he was making, about the books he was reading. Marcus told him about work, about the therapy sessions he had started attending again, about the slow process of rebuilding his life. The marshals were good people, just as Shonda had promised. They gave Elijah stability, consistency, the mundane gifts of regular meals and a warm bed, and adults who showed up when they said they would. But they also understood that the boy needed something more, needed the connection he had formed with Marcus, and they made space for it. Shonda called weekly with updates. Sandra Mitchell had lost her foster care license and was facing charges for child neglect. Elijah's mother, they learned, had died of an overdose 3 years ago, her body found in an abandoned building 2 states away. There was no other family to consider, no relatives waiting in the wings to claim him. "We are going to find him a permanent home," Shonda promised. "It just takes time." Time. Marcus was learning to be patient with it. Time to heal, time to grow, time to become someone new while still honoring who he had been. Some days, the process felt impossibly slow. Other days, he looked back and marveled at how far he had come. Thanksgiving arrived, grey and cold, and with it his parents. They came from Baltimore, his mother clutching a Tupperware container of sweet potato pie, his father moving with the careful dignity of a man who had worked hard his whole life and was not about to stop now. Marcus picked them up at the airport, and his mother cried when she saw him, cried harder when she saw how thin he had gotten, cried hardest when he told her he was going to be okay. "I brought Elijah for dinner," he said as they drove toward his apartment. "I hope that's all right." His mother, wiping her eyes with a tissue, gave him a look he remembered from childhood. "Of course it is all right. He is family now, is he not?" The word family landed differently than it would have before. Family was not just blood, Marcus understood now. Family was the people who showed up, the people who stayed, the people who saw you at your worst and loved you anyway. Dinner was chaotic and wonderful. Elijah was shy at first, overwhelmed by the attention, but Marcus's father drew him out with questions about school and stories about his own childhood in the South. By the end of the meal, the boy was laughing, actually laughing, the sound of it ringing through Marcus's small apartment like music. Later, after the dishes were washed and his parents had retired to the guest room, Marcus and Elijah sat on the couch, the television playing softly in the background. "Marcus," Elijah said. "Yeah? What happens after the marshals? Where do I go?" Marcus had been thinking about this question for weeks, turning it over in his mind, examining it from every angle. The answer he had arrived at scared him in ways that combat never had. But fear, he had learned, was not a good reason to avoid doing the right thing. "I've been talking to Shonda," he said carefully, "about what comes next." Elijah tensed beside him. "Are they going to send me far away?" No, Marcus took a breath. Actually, I was thinking you might stay here. With me." The boy went very still. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I have been working on getting certified as a foster parent. It is a lot of paperwork and a lot of classes and a lot of people checking to make sure I am not crazy. But if everything goes right, and if it is what you want, you could come live with me, permanently." Elijah stared at him, his eyes wide. "You want to be my foster dad?" "If you will have me. I know I'm not perfect. I have my own issues I am still working through, but I love you, kid. I think I have since that first day at the bus stop." The words hung in the air, terrifying and true. Marcus had not planned to say them, had not realized until they came out of his mouth that they were what he felt. But now that they were spoken, he knew they were right. Elijah did not respond right away. His face went through a series of expressions, cycling through hope and fear and disbelief, and something that looked like joy. Finally, in a voice so small Marcus had to lean in to hear it, he asked, "You are not going to change your mind?" "No." Marcus reached out and put his hand on the boy's shoulder. "Whatever happens, however hard it gets, I am not going anywhere." "Promise?" "Promise." Elijah threw himself into Marcus's arms, and Marcus held him. This child who had appeared in his life like an answered prayer. This gift he had not known he was waiting for. They stayed like that for a long time, neither of them speaking, letting the moment say what words could not. When they finally pulled apart, Elijah was crying, but he was smiling too. "I am glad I asked you if you were sad," he said. Marcus laughed, a real laugh, the kind he had not known he was still capable of. "So am I." The months that followed were a crash course in parenthood. There were challenges, of course. Elijah had nightmares that left him screaming in the dark. He had anger that came out sideways, at teachers and classmates and sometimes at Marcus himself. He had moments of profound despair when he was convinced that this too would end, that he would be abandoned again. But Marcus was there for all of it. Every nightmare, every outburst, every moment of doubt. He showed up the way Thomas Williams had shown up for him, the way he had promised Elijah he would. Day after day, week after week, until the boy began to believe that this time might be different, that this time he was home. The adoption was finalized on a sunny day in June, exactly 7 months after that rainy afternoon at the bus stop. They stood before a judge who had clearly seen too many cases like this one, who was professionally unmoved by the parade of broken families that came through her courtroom. But even she smiled when Elijah, asked if he understood what was happening, replied, "It means Marcus is my dad now. For real." "For real," the judge agreed. "Congratulations to you both." They walked out of the courthouse into the summer heat, Elijah's hand in Marcus's, both of them blinking in the bright light. "What do you want to do now?" Marcus asked. "It is your day. We can do anything you want." Elijah thought about it seriously, the way he thought about everything. "Can we go to the bus stop?" "The bus stop? Why?" "I want to see it again, where we met." They drove across town, Marcus navigating the familiar streets with a sense of wonder. So much had changed since that day in November. He was not the same man who had sat alone in the rain, lost in his own pain, unable to see past his own grief. And Elijah was not the same boy, shivering and scared, waiting for the next disappointment. The bus shelter looked exactly as it had, unremarkable and ordinary, just a metal bench under a metal roof. But standing there with his son, Marcus saw it differently, saw it as the place where two broken people had found each other, where a simple question had changed everything. "Are you sad too?" Elijah murmured, looking at the bench. "That is what I asked you." "I remember. I did not know why I asked. I just saw you sitting there, and you looked like I felt, and the words came out." Marcus nodded. "I was sad. Sadder than I had ever been in my life. I had given up on myself, did not see any reason to keep going." "What changed?" "You." Marcus put his arm around his son's shoulders. You reminded me that I was not the only one hurting, that there were still people who needed help, that I could still be useful. Elijah leaned into him, the way he had learned to do over the past months, trusting that Marcus would be there to catch him. I needed you too, he said. I know. They stood in silence for a moment, two people connected by circumstance and choice, by a question asked on a rainy day and all the days that had followed. Dad, Elijah said. The word still sent a thrill through Marcus every time he heard it. Yeah? Can we get ice cream? I think we should celebrate with ice cream. Marcus laughed, the sound easy and natural, a sound that had become more common as the months went on. Ice cream sounds perfect. They walked away from the bus stop, toward the ice cream shop down the street, toward the rest of their lives. Behind them, the shelter stood empty, waiting for the next person who needed its shelter, the next story waiting to begin. But their story, the story of a wounded veteran and a foster kid, and a question asked in the rain, was just getting started. And it was, Marcus thought, going to be a good one. Years passed the way they do, each one adding new chapters to the story that had begun at that bus stop. Elijah grew taller, his voice deepening, his mind sharpening. He excelled in school, just as he had always known he would, graduating near the top of his class and earning a scholarship to a university across the country. The day he left for college, Marcus drove him to the airport, both of them trying to pretend they were not crying. I am proud of you, Marcus said, gripping his son's shoulder. More proud than I can say. Elijah hugged him fiercely. I would not be here without you. You know that, right? And I would not be here without you. That is how it works. We saved each other. Elijah pulled back, his eyes bright with tears. I will call every week. You better. And I will be back for Thanksgiving. You better do that too. They embraced one more time, and then Elijah was walking through the security checkpoint, disappearing into the crowd, launching himself into the next phase of his life. Marcus watched until he could not see him anymore, then turned and walked back to his car. The airport was busy around him, people rushing in every direction, each one carrying their own story. He thought about his own story, about how different it could have been, about all the moments when things could have gone wrong, but had not. He thought about Thomas Williams, who had died too young, but had lived long enough to plant a seed that had grown into something beautiful. He thought about Shonda, who had gone on to reform the foster care system in 3 states. Driven by the same fire her father had carried. He thought about his parents, still in Baltimore, still calling every Sunday, still refusing to give up on him. And he thought about Elijah, his son, his gift, the boy who had asked a question that changed everything. Are you sad too? No, Marcus realized as he started his car and pulled out of the parking garage. He was not sad. He had been once. He had been broken and lost and ready to give up. But somewhere along the way, in the space between a question and an answer, between a bus stop and a courtroom, between giving up and getting back up, he had found something worth living for. And that, he understood now, was the whole point. The sadness never fully went away, the wounds never completely healed. But you kept going anyway, kept showing up, kept reaching out. Because you never knew when someone would need you. You never knew when your presence might be the difference between someone giving up and someone holding on. Marcus drove home through streets that had become familiar, past the bus stop where it had all begun, toward the house where photos of Elijah lined the walls and a worn paperback copy of Life of Pi sat on the bookshelf. He was still a work in progress, still learning, still growing, but he was not alone anymore. None of us are, really. We just forget sometimes. We get lost in our own pain, our own stories, and we forget that everyone around us is fighting their own battles. But then someone asks a question, makes a connection, offers a jacket in the rain, and suddenly we remember. We are all in this together, every single one of us, And when we remember that, when we reach out instead of pulling away, when we ask instead of assuming, when we show up instead of giving up, miracles happen. Not the supernatural kind, the ordinary kind. The kind that happen every day in bus shelters and coffee shops and hospital rooms, whenever two people decide to see each other, really see each other, and choose to connect. That is the story Marcus carried with him for the rest of his life. The story of a wounded soldier and a discarded child who found each other in the rain. The story of a question that saved 2 lives. Are you sad too? Yes, and that is okay because we are sad together. And together we can get back up. The summer after Elijah's first year of college brought him home with new stories and new perspectives. He had grown in ways Marcus could see and ways that remained hidden, the private evolution of a young man finding his place in the world. They fell back into their rhythms easily. Saturday breakfasts at the diner down the street, evening walks through the neighborhood, long conversations on the porch as the fireflies emerged. But there was something different now, a new quality to their relationship. They were no longer just father and son, they were friends. One evening, as they sat watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and purple, Elijah spoke. "Dad," he said, "can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you remember what you told me that first day about getting back up?" Marcus nodded. "I remember. You said success is not about never falling down. It is about getting back up one more time than you fall." "That sounds like something I would say." Elijah was quiet for a moment. "I have been thinking about what I want to do with my life after I graduate. And I want to help kids like me. Foster kids, kids who got dealt a bad hand and need someone to show them that things can get better." Marcus felt his heart swell with pride. That is a noble goal. "I've been looking into social work programs, maybe law school after that. I want to change the system from the inside, make sure fewer kids fall through the cracks. You know it is not an easy path. The system is big and slow and resistant to change." "I know." Elijah turned to look at him, his expression determined. "But you taught me that hard things are worth doing, that the battles worth fighting are the ones that matter, not the ones that are easy." Marcus reached out and gripped his son's shoulder. "Then you fight, and I will be right there with you every step of the way." Elijah smiled, that same smile that had first appeared in the Marshall home, fragile but genuine. "I know you will." They sat in silence as the last light faded, the stars emerging one by one. In the distance a bus rumbled past, its lights cutting through the gathering darkness. Marcus thought about all the buses that had carried him through his life. The bus to basic training, the bus from the hospital after his injuries, the bus he had almost taken to his interview, the day everything changed. Life, he had come to understand, was just a series of buses. You never knew which one would take you where you needed to go. You just had to be ready to get on, and brave enough to see where it led. "Are you sad?" Elijah asked suddenly, echoing the question that had started it all. Marcus considered the question honestly. "No," he said finally, "I am grateful for every moment that led to this one, even the hard ones, especially the hard ones." "Me too," Elijah said, "me too." They remained on the porch as the night deepened, father and son, 2 people who had found each other when they needed it most. The darkness was not frightening anymore. It was just the canvas on which the stars appeared. And somewhere in the city, another bus stopped at another shelter, where another person sat alone, waiting, hurting, hoping someone would notice. The world was full of such moments, small crossroads where kindness could change everything. Marcus did not know about that particular person, that particular shelter, but he knew they existed. He knew they were out there, the lost and the broken and the searching. And he knew, with a certainty that went beyond words, that the work was never finished. There would always be more buses to catch, more questions to ask, more chances to get back up. And as long as he was breathing, Marcus would be there, showing up, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one act of kindness at a time. Because that was the legacy Thomas Williams had left him. That was what Elijah had reminded him of in a bus shelter on a rainy November afternoon. That was the truth at the heart of every story worth telling. We are not meant to carry our burdens alone. We are meant to share them, to lift each other, to ask the simple, powerful questions that open doors between souls. Are you sad too? Yes, but we do not have to be sad alone. That was the answer Marcus had been searching for his whole life. And now, watching his son disappear into the house to get them both more coffee, he finally understood it. The sadness was not the enemy. Isolation was. The darkness was not the danger. Turning away from each other was. As long as they kept reaching out, kept showing up, kept asking and answering and choosing connection over comfort, they would be okay. Not perfect, not painless, but okay. And okay, Marcus had learned, was more than enough. It was everything. The years continued to unfold, each one bringing its own challenges and victories. Elijah graduated from college, then law school, and joined a non-profit dedicated to reforming the foster care system. He was good at the work, passionate and tireless, driven by a fire that never dimmed. Marcus watched him grow into a man of principle and compassion, a man who never forgot where he came from or the hands that had lifted him up. On the wall of Elijah's first real office, right next to his law degree, hung a framed photograph of a bus shelter in Portland. People asked about it sometimes, this strange piece of decor in an otherwise professional space. Elijah always told them the same thing. "That is where my dad found me," he would say. "That is where my life began." The words made Marcus uncomfortable at first. He did not see himself as the beginning of anything. He was just a man who had made a choice, who had seen a kid in trouble and decided to help. But over time, he came to accept the truth in Elijah's words. Sometimes the most important things start with the smallest choices, a jacket offered in the rain, a question asked in loneliness, a decision to show up, even when everything in you wants to run away. Marcus retired from his security consulting job at 65, his body finally insisting on rest after decades of pushing its limits. He moved to a smaller house closer to where Elijah and his family lived, where he could watch his grandchildren grow and play in the same parks where he had once taken their father. His grandchildren. The phrase still amazed him every time he thought it. 2 of them now, a boy and a girl, loud and curious and full of the energy that came from knowing they were loved. They knew the bus stop story, of course. Elijah had told them when they were old enough to understand, and they had looked at Marcus with new eyes, seeing him not just as grandpa, but as someone who had done something important. "You saved Daddy," his granddaughter had said, with all the certainty of a 7-year-old. "We saved each other," Marcus had corrected gently. "That is how it works." The little girl had thought about this for a moment, then nodded. "I want to save people too when I grow up." "Then you will," Marcus had told her. "I believe in you." The same words Thomas Williams had spoken to him all those years ago. The same gift passed down through generations like an heirloom. Shonda came to visit on a Saturday in August, the summer Marcus turned 70. She was retired now too, her hair fully grey, her face lined with decades of fighting the good fight. But her eyes were still sharp, still warm, still unmistakably her father's. They sat on Marcus's porch, watching the grandchildren chase each other through the sprinkler in the front yard. "You know," Shonda said, "Dad would have loved this." "He would have loved that his legacy kept going," Marcus agreed, "that it grew into something bigger than himself. That is what legacies are supposed to do." Shonda took a sip of her lemonade. "Did you ever imagine this, back at that bus stop?" Marcus shook his head. "I could not see past the next hour back then. I was just trying to survive." And now? Now I can see all of it, the shape of it, how every painful thing led somewhere necessary, how the worst moments contained the seeds of the best ones. Janda smiled. That sounds like wisdom. That sounds like getting old, Marcus corrected, but he was smiling too. They watched the children play, the sound of their laughter filling the summer air. In the distance, a bus rumbled past on the main road, carrying people Marcus would never meet to places he would never see. Each of them with their own story, their own struggles, their own moments of grace waiting to happen. Marcus thought about all the people who had showed up for him over the years. Thomas Williams, who had planted the first seed. His teammates, who had never stopped reaching out, even when he pushed them away. Shonda, who had helped him find Elijah. The marshals, who had given the boy safety when he needed it most. His parents, who had loved him through everything. And Elijah, always Elijah. The question that had saved them both, asked by a child who had every reason to stop asking questions at all. Are you sad too? The question echoed through the years, changing shape but never losing its power. It was not really a question about sadness, Marcus understood now. It was a question about connection, about being seen, about having the courage to reach across the gap between souls and say, I am here. Are you? That was the question we were all asking all the time, whether we knew it or not. The question beneath every hello, every handshake, every conversation with a stranger. The question that had the power to change everything, if only we were brave enough to ask it. Are you here too? Are we in this together? Will you catch me if I fall? Marcus had spent the first half of his life learning to be strong enough to stand alone. He had spent the second half learning that no one was meant to stand alone. That strength was not about isolation. It was about connection. It was about knowing when to give help and when to ask for it. Grandpa, his grandson called, breaking into his thoughts. Come play with us. Marcus rose from his chair, his joints protesting the way they always did now. But the pain was familiar, manageable, a small price for a body that had carried him this far. Coming, he called back. He walked across the lawn toward his grandchildren, toward the sprinkler and the laughter and the simple joy of a summer afternoon. Behind him, the porch where he had sat with so many people over the years, sharing stories and struggles and silence. Ahead of him, the future, uncertain as it always was, but no longer frightening. Because Marcus knew now what he had not known at that bus stop, on that rainy November afternoon when a boy with old eyes had asked him a simple question. He knew that he was not alone, that he had never been alone, that in the vast web of human connection, every thread touched every other, and a single act of kindness could echo through decades and generations. He knew that the sadness would come and go, like weather, like waves. But the love remained, the connections remained, the people who showed up day after day, year after year, choosing each other over and over again. And he knew, finally, that this was enough, that this was everything, that in the end, when all the noise faded and all the struggles were done, this was what mattered. Not what we achieved, not what we accumulated, not the battles we won or lost. Just this, the people we loved, the people who loved us, the moments when we chose to reach out instead of turning away. Just this, a hand extended in the rain, a question asked in the dark, a life shared, imperfect and precious and infinitely worth living. Are you sad too? Yes, and because we asked, we no longer had to be sad alone. That was the gift, that was the miracle, that was the story worth telling over and over again, until every lonely person at every bus stop understood. You are not alone, you were never alone, and if you can find the courage to ask, to reach out, to connect, you will find that the world is full of people waiting to answer. We are sad too, and we are here, and together we will get back up. Always. Together, forever. The end of one story is always the beginning of another. Marcus lived well into his 80s, surrounded by family and friends. his heart full even when his body failed. When he finally closed his eyes for the last time, it was with Elijah holding his hand and the worn copy of Life of Pi on the bedside table, the same book that had passed between them so many years ago. At the funeral, Elijah spoke about his father, not about the medals Marcus had earned in combat, though those were mentioned, not about the lives he had saved overseas, though those were honored, but about a bus stop on a rainy afternoon and a question that had changed everything. "My father taught me that heroism is not about grand gestures," Elijah said, his voice steady despite the tears on his face. "It is about small choices, made again and again, day after day. It is about seeing someone in pain and choosing to stop. It is about asking a simple question: are you sad too?" The audience was silent. Hundreds of people who had been touched by Marcus's life in ways large and small. "He found me when I was lost," Elijah continued. "He kept me when everyone else had given up. He taught me that family is not about blood. It is about the people who show up, the people who stay, the people who love you even when you make it hard." Elijah paused, looking out at the faces of friends and family, of veterans who had served with Marcus and social workers who had worked with Elijah, of children who had been helped by the foundation they had started together. "My father asked me to tell you something," he said. "He wanted you to know that it is never too late, to reach out, to change course, to get back up. He wanted you to know that no matter how alone you feel, no matter how broken, there is always someone waiting to meet you. You just have to find the courage to ask, 'Are you sad too?' It is such a simple question, but it carries the weight of everything that matters, and my father spent his life proving that when we ask it, when we truly see each other and choose to connect, miracles happen." Elijah held up the worn paperback book, its cover faded, its pages soft from decades of handling. "This was my mother's book," he said. "She gave it to me before she died. It is about a boy who survives impossible odds because he refuses to give up. When I met my father, I gave it to him to hold for me until I had a safe place to keep it. He kept it for 40 years. Elijah's voice finally broke, "And now I am keeping it again, for him until we meet again." The funeral ended, and the mourners dispersed, and life went on the way it always does. But the story did not end there. Stories never really end. They just pass from one teller to the next, changing shape, but never losing their essential truth. Elijah's children grew up hearing about their grandfather. His grandchildren heard the story too, passed down through the generations like a sacred flame. The bus stop where Marcus and Elijah had met became a place of pilgrimage for the family, visited on anniversaries and birthdays, a reminder of where it all began. And in cities around the world, in bus shelters and park benches and hospital waiting rooms, people continued to ask the question that Marcus Thompson had answered on a rainy November afternoon. "Are you sad too?" Every time someone asked, every time someone stopped to help a stranger, every time someone chose connection over convenience, the echo of that first meeting rippled outward. A wave that would never stop, touching shores that Marcus and Elijah could never have imagined. Because that is how it works. That is the secret that we forget and remember and forget again. We are not separate. We are not alone. We are threads in a vast tapestry, each one essential, each one connected to every other. When we remember this, when we act on it, we change the world. Not all at once, but one moment at a time, one question at a time, one act of kindness at a time. Are you sad too? Yes, we are, and that is okay, because we are sad together. And together, we can do anything. Even get back up. One more time. Always one more time. The foundation that Marcus and Elijah started continued to grow long after Marcus was gone. It provided mentorship to foster children, connecting them with veterans who understood what it meant to feel lost, to feel broken, to need someone to believe in them when they could not believe in themselves. Elijah personally interviewed every mentor who joined the program. He always asked them the same question at the end of every interview. Have you ever been sad? The question surprised many of them at first. It seemed too simple, too personal for a professional setting, but those who had experienced real hardship understood immediately. Yes, they would say, I have been sad. And Elijah would lean forward, his eyes bright with his father's intensity. Good, because the children we serve have been sad too, and they need to know they are not alone. The program grew from a single city to a dozen, then to every state in the country. Former foster children became mentors themselves, passing down the gift they had received. Veterans found new purpose after their service, the same kind of purpose that had saved Marcus all those years ago. And every year, on the anniversary of that rainy November day, the foundation held a ceremony at the original bus stop in Portland. They placed flowers there, told stories, reminded each other why they had started this work. The bus shelter itself had been replaced several times over the decades, the city indifferent to its significance. But the spot remained, marked now by a small plaque that read simply, Here. A question changed 2 lives. People passing by often stopped to read it. Some took photos, some just stood for a moment, thinking about their own lives, their own struggles, their own moments when a question from a stranger might have made all the difference. One such visitor was a young woman named Sarah, who had come to Portland to attend a conference and had wandered away from her hotel in search of coffee. She found herself at the bus stop by accident, drawn by some instinct she could not name. She read the plaque twice, 3 times, her eyes filling with tears. Sarah was 32 years old and felt completely alone. Her marriage had fallen apart. Her job felt meaningless. She had been thinking more and more often about ways to make the pain stop. But standing at that bus stop, reading about a question that changed 2 lives, something shifted inside her. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she had been avoiding for weeks. "Mom," she said when the line connected, "it is me. I need to talk to you about some things." Her mother's relief was audible through the phone. "Oh, honey, I have been so worried. I'm here. Whatever it is, we will figure it out together." Together. The word landed in Sarah's chest like a key turning in a lock. She stayed at the bus stop for a long time, talking to her mother, then to a counselor her mother connected her with, then to a friend she had been pushing away. By the time she finally walked back to her hotel, the sun was setting, and she felt lighter than she had in months. She never knew about Marcus Thompson or Elijah Thompson or the 40 years of love between them. She never knew about Thomas Williams or the legacy that had rippled forward through generations. But she had been touched by it nonetheless. The plaque had been there because of choices made long ago by people she would never meet. And those choices had reached across time and space to meet her exactly when she needed them most. That is how it works. That is the beautiful, mysterious truth at the heart of human connection. We never know how far our actions will travel. We never know whose life we might touch with a simple gesture, a kind word, a moment of presence. Marcus knew this, Elijah knew this, and now Sarah was beginning to learn it too. She would go on to become a counselor herself, specializing in crisis intervention. She would tell her clients about the bus stop in Portland, about the plaque she had found on her darkest day. "There is always hope," she would say, "even when you cannot see it. There is always someone waiting to help you. You just have to reach out." Are you struggling? Yes. Then let us figure it out together. And the ripples continued, outward and outward, touching lives that would touch other lives, an endless cascade of connection and compassion that had started with a single question on a rainy afternoon. Are you sad too? Such a small thing, such a simple thing, but within it contained like a seed in a shell was everything that mattered. The courage to be vulnerable, the willingness to see another person's pain, the recognition that we are all, in the end, fighting the same battles. Marcus understood this when he gave his jacket to a shivering boy. Elijah understood it when he asked a wounded stranger about his heart, and every person who has ever stopped to help someone in need understands it too. We are not meant to walk this road alone. We are meant to carry each other, to lift each other, to ask the questions that need asking and answer with all the love we have. That is the legacy Marcus Thompson left behind, not medals or monuments, but a question that keeps echoing through time. Are you sad too? And the answer always forever is yes, but we do not have to be sad alone. Not anymore, not ever again, because we have each other. And that is everything. That is enough. That is more than enough. It is the whole world. Right here, between us, where it has always been, waiting for us to see it, waiting for us to reach out and take hold, waiting for us to ask, are you sad too? Yes, me too. Let us get through it together.